waiting. I'm gonna switch camera. Okay, so project, that would help, right? PC, laptop, HDMI. Sorry, my camera is not focusing. Hi, how are you doing? Grab a Penduit kit, please, with 2 cable, a blue cable, and one of the things next to it. Connector. Hold on 1 second. Let me configure my video to not like filter out things, and then we'll share screen. Okay, so let's zoom in. So I want to take this opportunity to kind of go over the fiber information, and I'll drop some of this information into your lab. Your lecture notes. The book talks about WAN, and this particular chapter, I think we're combining a couple chapters like troubleshooting and things like that. But WAN is so essential. A lot of the times, Network Plus doesn't really ask a lot about WAN besides for the technology itself. But I think that for most of you who are entering the field now, you're going to see more prevalent fiber optic connection to patch panel and things like that. While we're getting situated, oh, let me give you a kit. Here you go. Then you are going to need. I'll put it on. Okay, so what you have today is Opticam2 kit. As I mentioned before, this kit costs about $700 or more. However, we got the education discount. Okay, so Penduit makes the kit. It's really designed for like on-the-go technicians. The next kit up, you would see a larger case that is about 1,000 plus. You can find cheaper kit on Amazon. So this is not a complete kit. Okay, I want to talk about the things that you will need when you work with fiber. Okay, so sorry, I'm zooming in and doing this at the same time. You will have these connectors, right? And they are usually sold in bulk. So in a network, we will probably get more than this, okay? However, as you can see that they are individually packed, so you can find that the components work together, okay? You will need an alcohol bottle. You can use one of those medical ones that press down that release alcohol from the top, or a squeeze bottle that you can use. But they do sell, let me see if I can find it to show you the picture, a fiber cleaning device tool. Let me see if I can find it. Something like this, and this is only about $25, okay? So I had bought these tapes with the rest of the money. So this insert goes into something like this, okay? And it looks like a box, but if you look at the picture, it has these, they're called cassette tape. And when you're replacing them, you just put them in. They look kind of like the receipt paper roll, but really small, right? So you would insert them, and there's a cap that you would use to be able to really dispense them. So the way this is used is, you see the top right here. This is where you would swipe your connector and your fiber strands before you insert them into the connector. Also, you need to clean them with alcohol. They can absolutely not have any kind of residue on them, right? Because fiber lines are glass core, and when you trim them or touch them, or if they break, right, these little fragments of glass or glass powder would get somewhere on the tip or on the connector. So now, because it uses light, it's very absolutely necessary that we clean them before we insert them into the connector. And as I mentioned, for those of you who just got here, right, we don't have a cleaver for you to cut. But in the future, I will get a roll of fiber, which only costs $100. So you can pull the strands and then you can insert. So the tool that we're using today is to use to terminate fiber line, right? In the back, if you look at that black box in the back, that's a fiber box, right? So you see all of those yellow cables, they are Ethernet cable that's patched over to a fiber connection. So there is a bottleneck, but you do have fiber connection on the backbone, and they pipe it. So Panduit makes all kinds of equipment, from connector to line covers to things that you would use, insulation, stuff like that, right? A lot of the times when you buy these things, you have to go through a vendor like Amazon, CDW, you know, cable distributors, cable.com, stuff like that. You don't usually get bigger strand for the multi-core cable from just like going to Walmart, and you would find something like this, right? Which is what you see. I want you to see that for home use or business use, smaller, shorter, more consumer-based ones for affordable price at Walmart or Best Buy. But you will not find, you know, the larger industrial roll like what we've seen with Ethernet cable through some of the, you know, main consumer vendors. So I just want to show you that this can be used to clean connector and also the line. If you don't have something like this, they do sell like a glass slab with all the color codes. So in the first video, it shows you how you can wipe it with alcohol and you swipe it on that strip. And what each of the strip color does is that it's a way that we can edge the actual fiber strand. Okay. So let's talk about fiber optic real quick. So inside your cable, it would look something like this. And so you see the blue cable, right? Or the teal color ones. And inside it, you would have, so the outside is usually a jacket. Now, the industry is really good at color coding things of late, which is really important because we want to be able to follow the standards. And so sometimes you see them in this color, but usually if you use the one with the kit, they're usually orange and yellow for different purposes, okay? And if you read the label on your bag, don't throw the bag away because it tells you what they are. Sometimes they're also printed on a tag on the cable, right? So on the orange one, it tells you that it is 1.25 millimeter, and this is a launch cord. We would use a launch cord to terminate another fiber line or a fiber cable, right? So think of it as this is the way that we can connect to our tester, which is the blue device that you get in that case. The yellow one, what you see is this is for the 1.25, right, SM. And this is also to be used with the termination tool. So a good kit would give you launch cable, right, to be able to connect your strands. And then a regular cable would look like this, okay? Now, you know that they are glass core, so they're not designed to be like twisted and turning like what you see with copper. So you just gotta handle it a little nicer. Okay, so these are that. And then the little bag that you got, these are the connector. And the bag, the manufacturer, if you look at, there's like a little ruler print, okay? And then on it, it will tell you, right, how the tubing would go. And then the bare fiber is where you would pull the strand from the fiber tube, right? So when you see those trucks, the telecommunication truck, they have these big giant roll in the back, and then they open up the manhole and they run them in, right? So those are the bigger fiber cable, right? Inside them, they would have different strands, multiple, and we use LED now, also laser, but traditionally we use laser for light emission type of cable like fiber. And it shows you how it should be inserted, how the jacket should go, and how tight of the buffer. But you can also find charts online for this in case you lose it. But Black Box, they do a good job. I like their brand a lot, you know, along with Panduit, you know, and so on. But there are, you know, less of a non-brand name ones. Okay. So as you open up your Panduit case, right? In the back is the battery component or the battery compartment. You need to unscrew that. There's a 2 AA battery that is included with your case. You can insert it and turn it on while we wait. So while you're doing that, we're gonna talk about how fiber works and what they look like. There's a screw, yeah. So we have a buffer coating and the jacket that goes around. Usually they are color. So that is just to use to protect the actual cladding and the cable itself. And it just looks really nice. So in a network, we would use the color to color code our cable, right? Like, so you can separate locations and things like that. Now on this one is, I don't know if you can see this, but on some of the rolling racks, you've probably seen the patch panel, which has these little claw-like clips, right? So, like I mentioned before, on the panel box, when you buy the patch panel for fiber, you are going to get something similar to this, where you would run the raw fiber to the back of this, and it will clip to all these little tiny white clips right here, okay? And then in the front, it would be Ethernet. So that's how we're able to patch panel to Ethernet, okay? So now if you ever have to work in the wiring closet, or what they call the communication closet, likely that you will have, nowadays, you will have to patch panel things like that. So when we troubleshoot, when you having a certain signal that's not coming in, so how is this gonna translate to the rest of the network, right? You're gonna connect devices to this eventually. So I can have a fiber line going directly into the Ethernet, and then from there I would connect my Ethernet devices, right? So you would have to use the tool to be able to clamp them and then install them. But they do sell panel boxes that have all of the fiber that's patched, right? So let me find a picture for you to see. So what that would look like. And they can go to a home, or they can go to, so In the back of it, it would look something like this. And depending on the type, you would be able to get. So we'll talk about LC and so on, right? And then if you want modular, sometime electronic stores, you will find these, but usually if you go through like cable distributors, there are a few stores around, or, you know, you can buy them online, of course, okay? Other type of panel box would look something like this, where you can buy the entire box. And people have upgraded their home to this when they have direct fiber or their business. So you notice that, so all the fiber would be here, see that? Okay, and then you would patch it out, okay? So that means that these are gonna connect. Now, assuming that your service provider run fiber already, then you'll be able to do that. If they need to dig, that's like at least $6,000 and up, depending on how much you want them to dig, right? So they have this tool that pull section of the ground really straight, and then they're gonna run the fiber line from their line to your facility. We had to do that. So if you walk outside and you see this black strip on the ground, that's because we have to have them dig, and you know, they have to go through the city for permit and all of that. And so that way we can get the service provider to give us the connection to that panel box and the contractor that installed that panel box, right? They're a licensed contractor, so they charge a little bit more, and with all the equipment, they do the testing and all of that. And that also gets connected to our RCCD network. So you can see how you can splice and terminate fiber to a box like this, okay, or a patch panel. Okay, so we only have to do 10 steps. So I wanted to spend this time to really talk to you about fiber in case you have to work on it. Okay, so we talked about how inside the fiber cable, what that looked like. Now, there are different type of fiber. There are the single mode fiber optic cable, and then there's the multi-mode. A single mode uses laser, and think of it like laser light that you use to play with your cat or whatever, right? It's designed to bounce off with the angle. So single mode is designed to go farther compared to multi-mode, which uses LED. That's a later technology. So when you see SMF, that's pertaining to single mode, and you often see them for the longer distance. They go really long. So when we're talking about, you know, going from city to city, that will be more on the single mode versus multi-mode. Multi-mode often would use something like for campus areas or stuff like that, right? So you have a little bit less of a distance. So on the inside, they kind of look close. The core is slightly, you know, microscopically, it's going to be a little larger and smaller when you compare them. So I took a picture from the internet, and so you can see that there. So on the single mode, you can see that they are close, but look at the core on the core, tiny, right? Because it uses laser, compared to the multi-mode where it uses multiple LEDs. And so on the cladding, you're always going to have that cladding for protection there. Okay, so that's what it looks like. And then on the multi-mode, this is a simulated picture, but you would see that it would look something like this. So the strands, if you ever seen like those pretty decorated lights that lights up at the end of the tip, they look like little wire that lights up, right? That's actually fiber because that's glass. So what you have is you have these tubes of glass that's going to be able to emit light, and that's how we are able to send data nowadays, right? So when you're buying fiber or fiber services, that's what they use. Okay, so the comparison between the multi-mode and the single mode, as you can see on how it transmits the light. So on it would have pulses of light. So on the high order mode, as you can see, they bounces off an angle, and then they also disperse and they output pulses. On the single mode, think of it more of like a laser where it would be straight. So this tends to be better for long distance because you don't have any kind of angle in the light emission. Okay, so that's the comparison for you. okay? So multi-mode is generally cheaper. Single mode is more, right? For a long time, we couldn't afford fiber, even, you know, in the larger businesses because they're just pricey. Nowadays, it's definitely affordable. And on the multi-mode, you have multiple light sources, and compared to a single mode, you have one laser source. And then on the multi-mode, you can go less than 5 miles. So like for a college campus or university campus, that will be fine. But for city to city, we would need to go with the single mode, look greater than 5 miles. So the stuff that you see that they run in the ocean is single mode, okay? And then as far as power goes, there's like a formula that I included to show you how that they can calculate based on power source, because all of this is ultimately electrical signal, right? So how the power is distributed through the fiber core when you're using the multi-mode, it's 100% distributed. And then on the single mode, since it's only have one core, that's going to be through the center core only have one core, okay? And then this is a comparison for, this comes from IEEE. So as we learn about the 10 bays, the 1000 bays, that really pertain to our speed, right? So in your network environment, the fastest that you can connect is usually Ethernet, right? Your gigabit Ethernet, locally. And then outside of that, your backbone going out to your service provider, we should use fiber because everything bottlenecks to that one point, right? They give you one public IP, one connection, or maybe two if you have a backup connection. So our local area network is really like Ethernet based, but leaving that, going into your service provider like Cox, AT&T, T-Mobile, now they do a lot of like wireless stuff too, right? Spectrum and so on, that should be fiber. And so the acronyms you would see that would be used are these, okay? Make sure we know these for CompTIA because they do ask about fiber standards, okay? So when we're talking about 10 bays, that's 10 megabit per second. When you go to the 1000, that's 1000 megabit per second. That's equivalent to 1 giga, right? And then you do have something in the 100. So when you're buying your fiber service, like for me, I get it from Spectrum. I'm buying a fiber package, but my house is still connecting with a coaxial, right? Because my house box, the termination on the house is still coaxial. So they're using copper to those green boxes on the street. And then those green boxes, they have like these, I don't know, around Moreno Valley, I've seen them. They're like little like green cover. If you lift them up, they're actually boxes that terminates out to fiber. And then those fiber lines get run underground, and you can find them when you crawl down the manhole. Each manhole is owned by a certain communication company. It's labeled, right? Like AT&T, Verizon, and so on. Verizon sold to Frontier in California, so those now belongs to Frontier. So when they service those fiber line, they would need to go into the manhole. They go to that section of the street. So on your street, if you're using coaxial like me, it's still copper to your house. So it's like you're buying something really fast, sort of, right? And then it's gonna funnel down to something a little bit less. So here, what it shows you is if we want faster speed, we're gonna go with the 1000 bays, and we can have an option. So if I'm connecting my business from here to Orange County using direct fiber line, right, I would usually have a service provider in Orange County and a service provider up here, and they do establish, you know, their within their own network, their fiber connection, right? Unless I have one company that does end to end, right, which is usually very expensive, I would use single mode for this, for the 100 bays. And then if I want the single mode, I would have an option to choose the LX and the LH. You often see the LX that's there now, okay? So now we, you know, over time, because of monopoly control, they don't want one company to own everything for communication, right? That's what we've seen in the past. So what happens is you are going to connect from one service provider to the next, and that's how we have a collaborated network environment, which eventually becomes our internetwork or the internet. Okay, so here are the fiber standards to make sure that we know them. Okay, yep.
I don't like this one, but I can't remember how you remember the difference between the L and the S.
So I usually, so in the LX actually is a way that in that we would have subcategory for this. So whenever I see the L, I always know that there's a single mode option in that. The exception is this one, but the LX up here, LX tend to be a single mode option. Okay, so they combine the multi-mode in this one, but if you look at the multi-mode, the maximum that will go is 550 meter no matter what. Okay, on the single mode, that tends to be the L. It would start with an LX, right? And then that would be 2 kilometer. And then if you want to go ocean or like, you know, across farther, right? That will be 70 kilometer. That will be your LH. Okay. Any questions? Okay, so just remember L would have single mode, and then your SX tends to be the multi-mode ones for the earlier ones, except for this. Okay. So they try to really standardize it so it's easier to remember, but sometimes IEEE, they combine things. So, all right, simplex and duplex. Okay, that's what it would look like between the fiber. So when you're looking at your cable, your blue-green cable, which one is it? It's a duplex, right? One for in and one for out. And then when you're using this one, the orange one, which one is it? Simplex, very good. All right, so single, simplex, double, duplex, right? And then if you cut them open, that's what they would look like, but we're not. All right, so when we say bare fiber, that's just the fiber strands, right? Primarily used to connect equipment, and you would need to terminate, okay? And then you would have patch cord, that will be the shorter length. So think of patches in to reconnect, right? Like to mend or to reconnect. So you will be able to connect and manage equipment, okay? All right. I threw in some additional terms in case you ever work for a telecommunication company, you might know. So the connectors. So when you see them, a clip, like a simple clip like this, right? And they are definitely smaller connector than your RJ45 or RJ11, right? So that's a UPC type connector. And then when it has a protector at the end of the clip, okay, like the teal color ones, that is an APC connector, okay? The way that I always remember it, it shapes kind of like an A if you turn it aside. So that's an APC connector. And the other one is a UPC where it doesn't have a little clip to your clip, the protector for the clip. All right, and then you also see a lot of audio cable. If you ever look up, like if you ever walk down like Home Depot or Lowe's and the section where they sell the cable, you're gonna find these. They are straight tips. They often are used in multimedia quite a bit. And so if you are a multimedia technician at different places like the city, the county, the university and stuff like that, you might run into these more. And some of the manufacturer, they make them for their own equipment like Sony, Philips, and so on. So they are specific. But if you ever buy like surround sound bar, you've seen some of the fiber optic cable being used for audio because it's fast, right? But the cheaper cable, I noticed that some of the cheaper brand ones, they don't last as long, and their connector is kind of a little flimsy. So you can definitely upgrade and buy or make your own cable if you know how. Okay, so earlier we saw what SE, what are they for? SE it's known as the square connector. It looks like a square, right, at the end. And it would have something like a button, but that's actually a cap that goes on top of your fiber strand. You can take them out. Okay. These right here, if you want to see them, right, you can take the little cap off. Okay. And they are, well, so these are dual, so you would have two. Okay. And so they're designed to really protect the actual fiber itself in the cladding. Okay, so for Daniel to see, we take these out. Okay. So on the square one on the SC, it would look something like that when you take them apart for the connector. So when you look at your connector bag, right, you would see that when you terminate them, they are slightly different because they do have like the little cap at the end. So that's where you would insert. Okay. Okay, so anytime when you're looking at the standard, it has an X in it, it's a fiber. Okay, whether it's SX or LX, you know it's a fiber, right? Because IEEE, that's what they use. And so, so for the smaller TX and the RX strands in one connector, you would make it a single polarity and then terminate at the ends, not required to polish or epoxy. So earlier, you know, I talk about how we would use a glass surface, right, to edge it. So that's called polishing after you slice. And then the tool today is like so much easier than what it was before. It's so nice. Like I was amazed at like the amount of tools that's available online for affordable price. But if you look at like 10, 15 years ago to get the tool for fiber, it's just hard because now there's more need. So they make more tool. So this is going to be really easy to use on the LC. This is what you would see on yours. Okay. So this is a newer style of the connector. So we're talking about the connector, right? And then it's going to be, this was created by a certain company, of course, but this is often used for Giga Ethernet adapters. So that's why you would see these being sold quite a bit more. So in your network, you're going to see a lot of these to the box. Okay. And they're usually with duplex. All right. So the comparison between the two, right? How are they so different? Cost is about this, almost the same. You're going to see that. The LC is going to give you higher density. It is cost effective and it really is designed to really fill fit for a lot of the equipment that we use in the network. So you're going to see more of the LC versus the SC, but you do see them sell SC for various use. So it is very mainstream. They are reliable. You can use it for deployment and they also are retrofitted for a lot of things in the network and in businesses. Okay. All right, so and the composite for those are a little, right, the size, the loss is about close to the same. So you are always going to get a little bit of loss. And this is what the device is going to tell you, right? So there's like a margin in the loss that you can't accept. So anything that's under that is going to be acceptable when you run a test on these. Okay, so if it shows like 0.17 or 0.30 or something like that, 0.30 is like between 0.25. So that's a little bit on the margin, but anything below 0.25 decibel is going to be fine. Your dB is fine. Okay. All right. Okay, so a little bit more. There are tons of other type of connectors that you see. Isn't that great? Right? So when you get certified as fiber technician, you have to know all of these things. Yes, question?
Question. Do you think like fiber optic will become like common in homes like eventually, or?
Yeah, just like how it took us a long time to get Ethernet into the home, because I think not just the industry, but I think the builder themselves, you know, so in all the newer homes now you see fiber box to the house. and then Ethernet inside for the drop for your rooms. So eventually, because we are still having a lot of Ethernet equipment in for our, local devices, I think eventually you're gonna see more fiber interfaces that's gonna be integrated with your computing systems and so on. It's been around for a long time. It's just that the technology now, they're able to produce it at a cheaper cost.
Yes.
So you do see manufacturer and builders and people are adapting them. So I wanna say 10, 15 years from now, you're probably gonna see more of them, like how we see Ethernet today. Like if you told me that you would have gigabit Ethernet at home 20 years ago, I'll laugh, because we didn't have that, right? We were using mostly like, the book talks about ISDN in the last chapter. When I went into work, it was ATM technology. That's like before DSL, okay? So, and then ISDN came along, tier 1, tier 2, and all of that. It's still on analog signal, but now we're digitizing everything. So I think I would say like within the next 10 years, we're going to see a rapid change in that, right? If we continue to trade a lot of the electronics equipment with China or manufacture some of it. Most of these are coming from overseas anyways, right? If you look like black box they produce in Costa Rica and not necessarily China, but you do see like South America and a lot of the other countries are producing these now. So, okay. All right. So here shows you a little bit more picture, because I wasn't sure if I was able to describe that in class. So I just took that so I can show you how that would look like on a rack, right? Even though this is like a simulated picture, but you would see, yes.
So does the technician have to test each one of those cables?
Use the terminator tool. So termination sounds very misleading in that, but just think about how you terminate a cable to reconnect it to another end. So that's how you would be able to use it. But they make other tester outside of this one. Okay, so this one is really used to connect cable to cable, right? Or make a connector like how you would use Ethernet tester, right? But there are other ones that, you can plug in, and if you look online, there are tons of, they're all-in-one devices for $7,000, $10,000. They make a lot of different ones for industrial use. So, but usually when your company does this, right, they don't really rely on the common IT technician. They normally contract that out to a certified cable, a fiber person, but you have to overlook their work. And then in the case you troubleshoot, yes, you have to go and check it. Okay, so, all right, we put the battery in, right? So this is just talk a little bit more about the how to calculate it. Maybe if you took physics before, they probably talk about this for the upper classes. And then attenuation, we know that attenuation just means that it's a decrease in signal. All your communication system has some form of attenuation, right? For fiber, even though it's very reliable, there is attenuation. People think it's like you getting 100% throughput, but that's a lie. There's never 100% throughput in anything, okay? Even at a light source, you will get close, right, to the max, but you won't get, you will have some losses, like what we saw earlier. And then your bending radius, so how much can you bend, right? How much can you close the loop on the fiber and so on? So it talks about there is a bending radius for various type. That's a limitation before it breaks, because it's glass. I tend to treat the consumer ones a little bit rough compared to what you've seen. So when you see the tube for the multiple strands, they look like the coaxial cable. That's like about the size, and then you can actually pull the strands from the inside. Okay, so here's a table for the loss on, comparing the attenuation, how this per splice, like that's the per cut. And then with the connector, So when you adapt the connector, you do have some loss in that because it reduces the signal. And then for the bandwidth, right? Because when they tell you 500 to 500, what does that really mean, right? So now you can see that it really pertains to how they adapt the signal from the cable and how that would be attenuated over time, or there's some loss, decrease in signal, and so on. Okay, so this type of class, it's gonna make more sense because all the stuff that we teach in the other classes, you're like, what? And then now, like the little pieces puzzle comes in and you're like, oh, that's what it really means. That's the technology, right? So the signal loss, and then we talked about how it can be lost over the distance. Okay, so you do some, you have to have some expectation in loss and how they calculate the loss in that. So if you are a fiber technician, you have to know how to do this. I should have one of my friends come and do this, but I thought about it at the last minute, so I couldn't get, but I'll ask one of my friends to come. He works for Spectrum. He's one of those fiber. And then I have another friend that owns he's a fiber contractor. He owns like a small company that does business connection. Okay. Calculating power budget. So just to kind of sum this up, right? When you plan for fiber adaptation to your network, the implementing of fiber, you need to think about, you know, what kind of connection you need it for, what kind of technology are you supporting, what kind of traffic are you using, and so on. Why do you really need it? Because on the business side, they're going to ask about that, right? It's an expensive project, not cheap. So how much are you adapting? Are you adapting 100% to your network? Are you only adapting to your backbone, which are your routers and your main switches and your security appliances? If you're servicing web servers, right? If you're servicing HTTP requests, you have to have some form of fiber unless you have somebody else host your data or host your site. Okay, like, you know, but in a larger enterprise, usually you would see fiber. So with that, we have to calculate the power budget, the safety margin, the losses in the splicing, and so on, if we're doing it in-house. If not, the engineer or the technician that does that, they would come up with this, and then they will be able to provide you an estimate for that, for their proposal. Okay, so now we come to the part, we're almost done. So your kit comes with the Opticam2. Okay, there are 2 placards. These are important, right? They are made to really put a ring on it and then attach it to your kit. If you look at it, it shows you how you would be able to insert, right, your raw fiber and then be able to set that up with your connector. Okay, so insertion mark. So on the new tool, if you watch the second video, there's like it shows the mark on how you can bend. So after you use a cleaver, what the cleaver will do is it creates these strip marks. It's going to take off the jacket, and then it can also cut it clean. So but instead of cutting it clean, what we're going to do is we're going to put a cut mark, and then you're going to bend it. Remember we talked about the angle earlier? You're going to bend it at a certain angle, and it's going to break clean. Then you never assume that it's straight. So you would use like some kind of glass, and then you would swipe it so that way, and then clean it, right? The people who don't really, if it's not using etched, if it's not required type of fiber, then you just take an alcohol swipe and then you clean it a couple of times. Just make sure you clean off all the debris and you're good. Okay, and then you can insert into the connector. So what we'll do is, after we put the battery into our thing, you can, mine just crashed. This is bootloader. This is an embedded system, so it has like a, anyway, maybe I'll get another one. So you can pick one of the cable that you want to use. I think I'll use the orange one. You can tear them from the side. There is so what you would need is you're gonna need cradles. Oh, I put everything. So this cable is for you to transfer data to your computer. This one actually is app capable, so you can also download an app and use your app for testing as well. We don't need to do that today. So there are different cradles, and on the cradle, they are all magnetic, right? So the black cradle, and if you look, it's really used to, if you look at the picture, it's really used to be placed onto the actual tool itself. Like this, okay? So you have 4 little dots and they're a magnet. So if you put it like close to whatever, so which way do I put, right? So if you're right-handed, then you are gonna put the cable on the right side, which the arrow is gonna point to the left. So you just place it on like this and it should magnetize it on there, okay? If you're left-handed, take it off, go the other way like the picture, and it will be like this, okay? So it's really designed for both sides. So that will be the cradle. And then you can also find other cradles. So if that cradle doesn't fit, the type of cable that the connector that you're using, there are 2 other ones, right? So remember the round connector that we talked about, right? This is for it right here. And then this one, yeah, so this one is for the SC, okay? And then the other one, sorry, I lost the thing. The other one is for the LC. So important that we know which connector that we're using. Okay, which one is this? Let's go back to the top. Which connector are we using? If I'm using the orange one, sorry. So this one is the LC. It has a guard, right? Notice. Okay. And then the one that without the guard is going to be the SC. So make sure that we have the right cradle, the right cradle for our connector. Okay. Okay, so once you have your cradle on there, I don't need the round one. So there are 3 types, right? The 2 silver are for, so on this one is the SE, which is the silver. And then on the LC is the black one. Okay, then what we're gonna do is to begin to really test it, what you're going to do is you are going to take your cable and you would take this end and you would place it into here. Oh, let me help if we take off the cap. Take off the cap. the white cap before you insert it. Okay, then this, right? We can open it. Test this earlier. Give me 1 second. The square. Should yours turn on? Oh, there, mine is. And you need to put your connector on there. Don't have another adapter. Yeah, I think we're missing an adapter. Sucks. So you can load the connector, but then it's not. Should be a little loose. This. Got it? So take the purple one, and then you are gonna get a connector. So I use a square connector. This should be like not 100% fitting. It should be like a little loose. I don't like what the picture shows, but Oh, sorry, Daniel. My camera just. While we'll put that together. Everybody okay? Oh, the white thing. Oh, the cat? Yeah, I don't think we have. Okay. How do we load on there? It's okay. Sure, like, get the video for you, but the video that they use. Lab 12. Okay. So we only have the white and the orange that came with our kit, which is the 1.25 millimeter. So we're going to use the, so if you're using the orange, right, that's the multi-mode. This is where for the, when you clean the alcohol in the white. So you would take the connector and take the cap off, and then you, if you don't have that, you just take the alcohol and you wipe it before you load it, right? Which we didn't do, but. And then on the second part, So this is the end of it, right? That's what you have. And then you have to swipe it, just the cladding, and put it back. So a little bit different than the picture. I'm gonna pause it here. Let's pause that there. On the picture, what it shows you is the way if you put the cradle on, and then on this right here, right? So if you are facing this way, right, this is supposed to go this way, and then your connector is gonna go attached to that. Okay. Let me see if I have the right connector that will ship with all the stuff that we got. So if you're using, see the way that they showed this here is if you look at the next part, okay, the bare fiber is gonna go to it. So it's supposed to line up to this little tube right here, okay? Okay, so if you place it on to the right orientation like that, then you're gonna insert, right, the end of your cable, that we got that. And then you're gonna take your, if you use the yellow like them, you're gonna put that tube there. And then you're gonna clean your connector with alcohol. Let's do the yellow so we can follow along just right. Okay, let's go back. So after you attach it from the front of your Opticam, you're gonna place the, you should be able to use either or. So before you insert the cable, make sure you take the white cap off and don't lose it. Okay, then you're gonna place on like this. Okay. Were you okay with that? It should work for either or, the orange or that one. Okay. Now it's gonna be a little loose, right? And that's what they said. So when you set it on the table, you would see that it's a little loose. So when you have the connector in, you're gonna find that it's supposed to fit the connector.
So this part goes in. Like this, it kind of goes like that.
Yeah. And then the raw fiber to go to the end of it. So the next part is you will clean your connector with alcohol, which is this end with the cladding, right? That's what they're showing. And then you have to put the boot on. Let's see. And then you have to cleave off. See, there are 3 pieces. That's why that thing is important. Okay. So you would put the boot on the cable itself, which we don't have, right? And then you would use their card, and it shows that there are 3 sections that you have to cut off. The first is for the bare fiber. then you're gonna have a second mark that's gonna be for the insertion. Okay, and then the third mark is gonna be where we're gonna put the connector. After we cut that with the cleaver, which is like a stripper, then we would clean it with alcohol wipe to make sure that it takes off the debris. Okay. And then you insert the fiber and you press down on the cleaver to take that off. 7 millimeter. Sorry. And that would just put a mark and then you bend it. I have an older tool. I don't have a tool that will like what they show, but and then you bend it and it will break. Uh-huh.
So this tool allows you
To
to
test
or
to test a signal
just to sit.
from the fiber to your connector. Okay.
It also we can cut with this too.
No, we would
Oh.
use a stripper and a cleaver. So you can use the wire stripper or the fiber stripper, right? So you would take the connector and then you would place that onto the, like that, like how it's about to do now. Oops. So you just tell it what kind of connector you're using on the screen, and then you need to lift up. You see that? You lift up and then you insert the connector into the tube, like so. I don't think I have the right connector for you guys though.
Yeah, so the group goes on like the center of the.
Mhm. Yeah, it's attached to this to give it a guard, but when you insert the other end, what you will find is that it doesn't. I wonder. Take off the purple piece, and then you are going to. Yeah, you're right. The groove is gonna go onto. There's a clip. Hold on 1 second. You should be able to insert one of the pieces. Like so. Okay, take off the purple piece. And then this is the tail, which where the fiber is gonna go. And then if you see, it has like a trim edge. Just line that up with the trim edge and then insert it so it looks like this. So the rubber part is gonna be in the back. And then align the groove part to the groove part on the housing. So after you have that, then you can let's see, it's actually fitting. So the one that you have in the bag that I gave you, this is a square, right? Which is different than the one that they're showing there, because that one is not. So if we go back to what we were talking about earlier here, this one is an SC. So if you're setting it for an LC, then you won't be able to. So because if you look at the back itself, it actually also tell you that it is an SC. Okay, so take off the purple stand that it's on, and then you are going to insert it into its housing like this. Okay, just line it up and then put it in. And then make sure that we are I just want to make sure we use the right cable for the launch port. 1.5 up to launch. Okay. Then you just connect it. Let me see. I don't think this one fits the yellow. Okay. So put that on.
don't have a cable. Can we just insert this part?
I'm sorry? Yeah, so you just want to put the connector on there. It won't be able to fully test it. A picture of it. Yeah. Let me see if I can put everything together. I can show you. Give me 1 second. It should fit. Oh, got it. Okay. So, sorry, I confused you earlier. Use the gray cradle, and it should be like this with the yellow. Okay. It should like fit just right. It's not too tight, but it's not. So your cable, the launch cable is gonna be on the thing here. And then you take the connector off, the purple part, just slide that off. And then you're gonna slide the 2-piece into, it's like a square housing. And this is an SC. So there's a groove to the housing, and then there's a groove to, yeah. So if you have raw fiber, then it's gonna go here, David. It's gonna line up and go here after you cut.
Oh,
Okay. Yeah. You clean it and then just insert it. And then you would press the button and select the connector, so you just tell it it's an SC. And if it transmits the signal to your fiber, then it will tell you pass or no pass. Yeah, that's how you test it.
She said use it during the. Yeah, oh. Yes, we use it during the black cap. And there is solid one that says this, and then I should put like the little.
Connector off and then put it on the housing. So the raw fiber, once it's cut and clean, it will be lined up to this metal hole, right? And then you will press the button to select your connector type, And if it transmits the signal to the fiber that you attach the strand, it's going to tell you what is the dB that is lost and whether it passes or not. So if it doesn't pass, we just recut the fiber strand, re-clean it, and reinsert it until it passes. Okay. Use a yellow. You have a yellow.
No, I forgot to switch it.
Okay. You can, yeah, unfortunately, the connector that we're using, it will fit that size. Press down the clip.
Oh,
Okay, take a picture, and then you're gonna answer some questions. So you're gonna put the metal piece on the clip. Should like go on kind of tight-ish, right? And then take off your black cap. That will be the tail of it. And then you are going to put the clip and line it. So take, you see the white piece, that's gonna go to here. Okay? So push the metal into the connector. Got it, okay? Take a picture. Yeah, perfect. So your raw fiber will go here. After it's clean. And we'll select the connector type and then test it. They'll tell you pass or fail. All right, good. You can also use the orange. Yellow. So now you know how to. It's a little, it's a little tricky. Because sometimes, like, you know, you see some connector, but in general, it's standardized like that.
Push it in.
Yeah, you would just put the cladding to the hole there. Just lay it down. Should line up and push it down on the wall. There you go. Yeah, that's good. So we want it kind of straight when we line up our fiber, right? So you don't have a lot of loss. Really perfect. Yeah. All right. Picture. So we're gonna submit a few answers to the questions that I posted in the document, and then we are going to take a picture. Let me see how this looks like on. And then when you're done, just make sure that we put the caps back. Okay. You know, I wish they made like Ziploc style bag for these, but you know, they don't always. So one of the things that I didn't talk about was the little cover. You can also use the cover, right? For if you watch the second video, he talks about that. It is also magnetized. And the way that you put it, there's these two holes right here. You would cover it like this. Okay. Only in the case that you need to. And then when you're finished, when you put things back, all the extra cradle and things, you can stick them on the little pockets on the side. And also, can you please take the battery off because these drains like a lot. And then the next time I teach it is probably in like a year. And then I find out that all my kits need AA battery again. So unfortunately, we didn't have no fiber strands, but when I buy it, if you want to make them, I'll let you know and you can come in and make them. Okay. So we are going to answer before you submit. Make sure we answer the questions for the lab. Just a few questions at the end. Right? Take a picture for your thing. What have you learned in this lab when you work with the fiber? How would you use fiber optic cable in the network? What type of tools do you need to install fiber optic cable on a patch panel or panel box? Mm-hmm.
I guess mine is doesn't fail.
Yeah, because we don't have no fiber strand going into your other side,
All right.
right? Because it has no signal to be sent anywhere. So just take a picture of it that way. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have any fiber strand for you to use this time, but when we do have some later, we can play with it some more.
I was able to get a reading.
Yeah?
Yeah, I got one fail and one, pass.
Okay.
I passed on the yellow one and failed on one.
Okay, good. It should, well, yeah, but ideally we would have a fiber strand that goes to this side, right? Or the opposite side of your cable or your opposite side of your cable. So I will get them to buy me more complete things. Should we put the cover on the connectors and things? I didn't show you this, but I bought a bunch of coupler and ultimately down the line, I wanted to put together a box, like a panel box like that, right? You can buy these coupler where you can use the duplex. You can pair up the duplex with it. Oh. Oh, it did come with a chart for the loss. For Daniel, that's a coupler right here. And it comes with like a chart. And then when we're done, you can just put them up in the front and I'll put them up. Just some snacks up front. I saw a kit online for $100-something bucks. It's like a student kit. That one is pretty good too. I had asked for that before, but they wanted to buy this kit through CDW, and I said, sure, $700, great. I was hoping for more things in it, but so in addition to this, you're gonna need a cleaver, right, to bend. you would need a stripper. You can use a lot of the fiber optic stripper. They're like only $10, $12. Alcohol wipes. Right, you should be good. And then of course, fiber strand. Yes.
Is it like common for employers to like kind of expect you to have your own tools?
No. Well, the basic tool, like for computer repairs and things like that, yes. I normally just try to accumulate it over time, and you never know when you're gonna need something to test, right? Like when you install Ethernet cable and so, but yeah, you don't have to. Most of the employers, they might have their own. But it's always good to have like your little tool belt.
Like something like this, you think they would provide, or they expect you to have it?
Usually fiber is done by certified fiber technician, but a tester like this, they might have it, or you might suggest that they would buy it so that way you can troubleshoot the panel. Yeah, so you might not have to buy something like this. You usually don't. But if you put fiber on your resume, right? Like, so when you put this stuff on your resume, right, you would say know how to test using Opticam, right? Test fiber lines using Opticam, or terminate fiber line, I should say. I use the right term. And then what else? Opticam2 from Panduit. You can say know how to able to distinguish between different fiber optic types, connectors, and so on. So I want to show you so that way in case you need to use this knowledge, you can. Network Plus will not go into the detail except for the standards it will. Sorry, Daniel. Okay. I wish they made a better case that you can put the cable in there. I guess you have to straighten up the cable. You can actually do that. But you can leave it out if you like.
Cyber Summit,
Mm-hmm.
partners,
Yeah. Yeah.
I like this. I've been trying this around.
Oh, good.
I don't know where they sell this, but I don't know. And then I said another one, it's like a little screwdriver thing.
Yeah.
And then they have this one that they give away.
Help the people here to buy something like that. I told them to buy USB for students and stuff. Yeah, that would be good to use. I used to have an all-in-one tool like that for like a keychain, and I think I lost it over time, but that would be good to carry. Good idea, Michelle. Yeah, the fancy tech company, they always have cool gadgets. That's why I like the conferences. You can always get free stuff outside of the t-shirt. You know, Cisco, for how much money they make, I visited them a few times already. They only give away stickers. Yeah, like, you know, you would think that like for a company that size, they would give away like really cool stuff, but yeah, they only give away stickers. So when I go there, I would take like a stack of stickers and I would stick them all over my computer or give them away to my students. Because I was like, they are so cheap. But they do give away, like, you know, they have contests every year for design and things like that, for solutions. Yeah, I signed up for the Cyber Summit that was happening in LA or virtually. So we had written another grant for apprenticeship. So if we can get more money, we'll be able to let you go to conferences. When I taught the networking class for the Dong credit, one of the students, he loved cabling so much, he went and got himself a kit. He was making cable. Okay, Daniel, I'm gonna stop recording.